Hello, welcome to Pebble Ripple Connection, where we focus on changing our thoughts and actions to be more positive, one ripple at a time. Welcome to the podcast. And so today I have a topic I want to talk about, which is perception. It's our perception and how that affects our mental health. And so, what's odd, I've been thinking about it for a couple of weeks, addressing perception, because I find that ultimately our perception uh, fuels what we think about ourselves and about the world we live in. And so, last night I was flipping through some programs on Nova, and they just released an episode called Perception Deception. And so it's a great episode. I suggest you watch it. It's on PBS Nova. Um, Now they dive really deep into what's going on in the brain when we perceive things, whether it's visual or hearing, sound, anything we perceive with the five senses. So it's pretty technical, but it's a fascinating show. So I think it's about 35 or 40 minutes. So if you have a chance, catch that. It strained my brain so much. It's like I can't even think about this too deep because it gets really deep with science. So anyway, for our purposes today, we're going to talk about human perception and how it affects our mental health. So have you ever noticed how two people can live the same day and or similar? I think we all have unique experiences, but let's say we have a pretty complacent day. um, Go to work, come home, eat dinner, go to bed, or whatever your normal day is. Imagine two people doing that simultaneously, and then these two people can have two totally different perceptions of what that day was like. One can wake up the next day grateful and energized, while the other one may wake up and feel heavy, anxious, or just defeated, even if they had similar experiences throughout the day. So the difference isn't necessarily circumstances, although we know we all experience circumstances can be a little different, but it's not so much the difference in circumstances as it is perception, how that person perceives that day. Um, Today, what I'd like to do in this episode is share a simple but powerful framework that I've noticed over several years of working with clients. What I'm sharing here are my thoughts based on observations. I don't have any scientific data to support my interpretation of what I'm going to share with you today. I am going to cite a few researchers, but it's just to support other topics like compassion and positive psychology, not necessarily human perception. And so, getting along with it, what I want to share is I think there are three core perceptions that shape our daily emotions, our resilience, and our overall well being. So, the first one is our perception of ourselves. The second one is our perception of the world around us. And lastly, our perception of what the world thinks of us. These three different lenses work together like a pair of eyeglasses that we never take off. It's constantly on. They intertwine with each other to help us develop our perceptions of the world, whether they be distorted. If our perceptions are distorted, even small little changes can feel overwhelming, either in the world or in my own life. And if my perceptions are clear and balanced, then life feels more manageable and oftentimes beautiful. And so, this is not to imply that we either have a distorted perception 100% of the time or we have a clear, balanced perception 100% of the time. No, we can all have a tough day. We can all feel like, I can't do anything right today. The world just seems to be against me. Or Why should I even get out of bed? I screwed up yesterday at work so bad. I'm sure I'm going to do the same today. Negative perceptions. We can all have a rough morning or a rough day. The key there is, first of all, self-awareness, realizing I'm in that negative self-talk or self-view, and then be able to redirect and apply things to pull me out of that. When we do that, this kind of changes the way our brain works. So, the one thing I'd like to add is that our perception, it's not fixed. We're not born with these perceptions. We learn perceptions. It's part of just human development. And I would argue perception is most likely all nature. It's what we learn. It's what we learn from our caregivers and from the environment we're raised in. And so it can be changed. And like I said earlier, if you're self aware when you're making negative or having negative thoughts or making negative decisions or negative behaviors, if we're self aware of that, that's key. I'm not going to say that's a problem half solved, but I'm going to say that self awareness is key. uh, I need to be aware of what's going on in my brain, in my thought patterns, and then being able to adjust those to maybe something more positive. And we do that in baby steps, folks. It's very rare have I seen someone make drastic changes really quick and stick to them. So, with baby steps, just moving very slow, we can slowly adjust each one of these perception lenses: perception of the self, perception of the world, and my perception of me, or what I think the world thinks of me. So now let's dive in and let's explore each one of these one by one. Okay, so your self perception is the foundation. It is the story you tell yourself about who you are, what you're capable of, and what you deserve. When this perception or this lens is negative, we can fall into classic traps or classic negative self talk, such as, I'm not good enough, I always mess things up, or I'll never change. Why does anybody want to have anything to do with me? Now, these examples of thoughts, they can fuel depression, they can fuel high anxiety, and most definitely fuel imposter syndrome and burnout. We're just wiped out. The negative things we tell ourselves don't just make us feel bad, it can change our behavior entirely. For example, if I'm feeling very insecure at work because I messed up on a spreadsheet or a report yesterday and the boss called me out on it, and so now I'm feeling very insecure. Uh, then, if an opportunity arises in the office for growth, I may not go for it because I don't believe in myself. I believe I'm just going to mess it up. So I may withdraw and not take advantage of opportunities that could arise in the workplace. And this might not necessarily be a new position. It could be a project that the boss comes out and asks, "Hey, can someone handle the Jones file? It shouldn't take long, but I need somebody to take over this project." Something like that, just a little something else added to your plate that you want to go for it and show the boss and the company that you are a good worker. But someone with negative self talk, someone that's beating themselves up constantly, they're probably not going to take that opportunity. And so, like I said, that not taking opportunity is our behavior. We know what negative thoughts can sound like, but behaviors often they manifest in behaviors. And so, on the flip side of this particular perception, the perception of self, if we look at the flip side of that, a balanced person or a balanced perception of the self might say, after a mistake, let's say still I messed up a spreadsheet at work. So someone with a balanced self-perception might have this thought: well, I'm a work in progress. I have strengths However, I have areas I need to learn to grow. And personally, one thing that I use, and I used to use a lot in my early work on my own mental health. I think mental health work is ongoing throughout your life. So I don't do this as often, but I still tell myself this. When I mess up or think a negative thought, I'll say, okay, it's okay. I'm working on it. Right. And sometimes I even reach back and pat myself on the back. It's like, okay, I'm working on it. You got this, girl. Hang in there. More validating things. And, with a lot of my clients, I see people with that positive, balanced perception for other people. They will validate and uplift other people, but they rarely do it with themselves if they're having negative thoughts and a negative self perception. So, one way we can look at this is learning to respond to negative thoughts with compassion and learning to accept your mistakes, embrace them. Uh, I don't think any of us like to make mistakes. However, we're human. It's going to happen. Now, the key is we want to learn from those mistakes so we don't make them again. But again, if the task at hand is a difficult, complex task, there's maybe another mistake. But I have found there are very few mistakes that cannot be fixed. So, learning self compassion, learning to be accepting of your flaws and your mistakes, these things can help build resilience. Resilience is what helps us manage this crazy, crazy world and manage our noisy, noisy brain at times. So, thanks to neuroplasticity, our brains can literally rewire with new positive thoughts. Now, neuroplasticity just means that our excuse me, that our brain can change. And for so long, scientists thought once the brain was developed by the early to mid 20s, that was it. But science, the last 20 years, especially the last 5 to 10, has really shown that we can change our brain. It's never too late to change those negative thoughts or that negative self perception into something more positive. And again, I want to emphasize if we are more balanced and we have more positive thoughts about ourselves, it does not mean, again, that we're not going to have a rough day and be hard on ourselves from time to time. But the key is, folks, with self awareness to recognize I'm going down the negative thought tunnel and then pulling myself out of there with positive validation and positive self talk. Um, and so, one of my favorite practices comes from a researcher, Kristen Neff. She studies self compassion. She's got some pretty good stuff out there. So if you're interested in compassion, self compassion specifically, uh, look at some of her studies. It's pretty interesting. So anyway, she suggested that instead of beating yourself up after a mistake, try telling yourself, similar to what I said a while ago. You could say something like, "This is hard. I'm just human. And maybe what can I learn from this?" I know what can I learn from this has been something I've used when life just is throwing you curveballs all day and you feel like you've got up on the wrong side of the bed, nothing's going right. Maybe not detrimental not going right, but it's just you put some popcorn in a microwave and it burns. You on the way to work, you're already running a couple minutes late. There's an accident, and so now you're going to really be late. It's just these little things that happen in life that sometimes seem like they're all happening at once, and the world is picking on me. So when I feel like that, I just kind of step back and think, okay, this hasn't been a good day, or this hasn't been a good experience, whatever that might be. Uh, so I'm going to rethink what just happened, and I'm going to think, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? And so, just to wrap up on self perception, I'll say I would guess, again, I don't have research data to support my interpretation, but probably 95 to 99% of the people that I see in my office have a negative perception of self, which can also be called a low self esteem. And with low self esteem, there's no trust. And I did an episode previously about trust. So it's learning to build that trust. And so, even though we're focused on perception here, I think trying to do some newer practices or learning some skills to shift from a negative self perception to a more positive one, we are slowly building trust in our ability to be a human being and our acceptance of mistakes that we make, as long as we're learning and growing from those mistakes. And so, yeah, most of my time and clients' time when we're working on this is spent around their perception of themselves, and uh, and the other two perceptions we'll address in just a minute. But there's also clients showing up; they're very afraid of the world, or they think everybody in the world thinks like they do, and so these other two perceptions also add more fuel to that negative fire on my perception of myself. So that's what I have to say on the perception of the self. So let's move along to the perception of the world, a person's perception of the world. I want to share this example and then I'll get back onto my notes. But I had a client one time and they were talking about their 5-year-old child freaking out every time it rained. And I found that odd. I mean, the client was kind of complaining about it, but they love their child. You know, they knew they have to comfort the child and so on. But it came up in a session, and I said, well, I don't understand why a 5-year-old would be terrified of the rain. Have they had trauma that involved rain? You know, this could be a car accident, or they could have been locked outside for 5 minutes and the parents didn't know, and it's thundering and lightning and raining. I mean, it could be any number of things where that child would associate rain with something dangerous or scary. And so when I asked this, the client said, well, you know, a couple of years ago, we had that really big flood, and that scared me to death. And I was terrified, and the whole community was in it. You know, it was just terrible. We had the news on and the weather constantly worried about this flood. So I guess my child picked it up there. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. I think the child picked up that fear from the adult. My client was terrified of the rain after this flooding event a couple of years before. And this anxiety, this extreme fear of rain was passed to the child, which the child learned this through observation of behavior. The child wasn't born this way. And the reason I even ask why the child was afraid is because that's not typically normal. Little children, they're fine as long as their parents are fine. They're not really paying attention to the rain. And if you let them, they'd probably go out and play in it and stomp in mud puddles and have a heck of a good time. So that example shows how my client passed on a very, very fearful perception of rain. And they also were very fearful of traffic and other things in the world. So as I'm listening to this client, I'm thinking this poor child is going to wind up in my office when they're 20, 25, maybe 30 years old with general anxiety disorder because they're terrified of everything in the world. So just give you that quick example. And so going to that, so this client and their child perceive the world as a very dangerous place. And I find in my observations, most people with extremely high anxiety are extremely fearful. And if not the world is a big construct. Let's say they're fearful of people. They're fearful of not being accepted. They're fearful they won't fit in. They're fearful of the world as a whole is out to get them. And so that is a fearful perception. Then you have other people that might have more of a the world is more fundamentally safe. There are dangerous things out there. I can put myself in dangerous situations, but overall, I think the world is fairly safe, and the world can be an adventure. There can be lots of positive and good things in the world. Um, Another type of perception when we're looking at the world is the world offer me abundance or is it scarce? This could fall under a child that didn't have enough to eat coming up versus a child that had everything, yeah, anything they wanted. Um, Another example is the world fair or chaotic? Again, going back to the way we were raised, I don't believe any parents are perfect parents. We do the best we can. We are going to make mistakes. However, is fair versus chaos. Chaos is again uh, often seen in clients that experience trauma as children or their home life was not stable. Now, this is not saying their parents were bad parents, but if their parents are struggling with mental health issues, and it can be chaotic. They say the parents can't keep a job, or the two parents argue often. That child, it's they're going to be hypersensitive in that house because it's not going to feel safe and stable. Again, a fair house or a stable house does not have to have perfect parents. No such thing. Parents are going to make mistakes, but we're looking at these perceptions as chaos or fair. And a lot of people that show up in my office, they had a very chaotic childhood. And so you have these, is the world safe or dangerous? Is there abundance out there or is everything scarce? Is the world fair or is it chaotic? And there's probably some more contradictions or examples, but these are ones that come to mind for this brief episode. But there's good news. There's psychologists like Martin Seligman. He studies positive psychology. I think he's done a couple of TED Talks too. You can look him up. But his research has shown that pessimists or people that are negative, they see the cup half full, and optimists, they're going to be more positive and see the cup half full. Oh, wait a minute. Pessimists half empty, optimists half full. Between pessimists and optimists, Seligman found that they interpret the same events quite differently. Like, for example, a pessimist may see a rainy day and think to themselves, this always happens to me. Right on the day I'm supposed to be outside, it rains. This always happens to me. Where an optimist needs to be outside, they may say, well, oh, it's raining, but I got my rain jacket. It'll pass, and you know what? The garden needs it. So, see, even though the rain might have been an inconvenience for the optimists, what are they going to do about it? They can't, reach up in the sky and turn off the spigot. Doesn't work that way. They're just choosing to acknowledge it, accept it, and maybe find some a positive insight with it, which is the garden needs it. And so, trauma, chronic stress, or endless negative news can can affect how we view the world. And I think social media makes it worse. It just amplifies negativity bias. It's you don't see, although I do see positive things on X and Facebook and Instagram. Uh, I think negative information sells or gets more clicks faster. It's just an opinion. I don't know if that's for sure, but it really it gets more clicks. And so social media is there. Keep that in mind. We don't want to do endless scrolling over negative media. Another example of that is I've had clients that aren't happy with the current administration, or I've had clients that weren't happy with the previous administration. Administration meaning the leaders of the United States of America. And they want to gripe and complain, and I allow venting in my sessions. However, the thing is, they constantly are looking at the news. They're looking at nothing but negative news, and then they get worked up, and so then they get angry. They're angry at the administration. They're angry at the world. They got to blame somebody. So typically, it's whoever's the leader. So now I'm really, really mad. Well, then my anxiety kicks in because I don't trust this leader. There's wars going on across the planet, or riots, or protest, violent protesting in my own country. I'm scared and afraid. It's negative out there. I'm scared. And so people withdraw when they're having thoughts like this. So monitor your news. Really, and if you are looking at news, try to focus on positive. There's nothing wrong with wanting to see news, but try to balance out your news. And so, anyway, moving along from social media and negative news, one thing, and this is good news for you, is we can update this lens by rewiring our brain. And I mentioned a little bit about that earlier, but some examples of how we can rewire our brain are, one exercise that I often will suggest to clients is practicing gratitude. So one way to do this is, before you ever get out of the bed in the morning, what are you grateful for? What's one thing you're grateful for? Uh, to me, keep it simple. Think of one thing. When I started doing this earlier, I would get feel down on myself because I didn't list everything in the world I was grateful for, because there's a lot. And I thought, it's okay, Susie, you can be grateful for just one thing this morning. We already know you're grateful for all of that. Let's just state one of those things. And so, another example a lot of therapists suggest is people keep a gratitude journal. And this might be something where you, before you retire at night or sometime during the day, you write in that journal, you write down three things that were good that day. What were three things you're grateful for? Good things that happened to you. So there's a couple of gratitude exercises. And then also, one of my favorite and most often go to is a mindfulness practice. I think with mindfulness can look lots of different ways. Here's a couple of examples. Mindfulness or mindful breathing. Just breathing in. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Release, 2, 3, 4. On that release, do it as slow as you can without passing out, because that release really affects your heart rate. It really starts slowing it down. Now, it's not going to slow it down with one deep breath, but if you're focused and you're focused on breathing in, hold, breathing out, and you are intentional on how fast you're doing that, then this can bring your heart down. And then also, there's, like I said, there's many mindfulness things. One thing I do with clients, and I also suggest that they do, is about mindfulness body scan. It's also called a mindfulness meditation on some apps. You can find these in apps. And I've got a couple on my website, pebblerippleconnection.com, under free resources. But anyway, it's really just making your brain focus on the five senses or your body as a whole. And if my brain is focusing on my body, whether I'm focusing and wiggling my little toes, or I'm rolling my neck or rolling my shoulder, doing something where I'm focused, if my brain is focused on doing those tasks, it can't ruminate and go down the rabbit hole with negative thoughts. It's got to focus on the body. And so the mindfulness uses the senses. And since our body is always in the present, as far as I know, I don't think they're doing time travel yet, but who knows? Our body is always in the present. And so if we can connect our mind and our noisy, noisy brain to the body, then we can bring that brain, or try to calm that brain down a little bit. So I think practicing mindfulness, body scan slash meditation, and gratitude are two very strong tools that you can use to slow down negative thoughts, and just be present in the moment. And so, a growth mindset, as Carol Dweck teaches, can add another layer of helping us be more positive. Believing, having the belief that challenges help us grow rather than, I'm a rotten piece of poo because I didn't get through this challenge or I made a mistake today. In other words, believing that challenges prove that I'm inadequate versus helping me grow. And when our view of the world feels more supportive to us, then motivation and hope just kind of naturally grow from that. And so, yeah, it's all about taking the time. And I think step one is a self awareness that whether we have a positive or negative view of the world, and of course, I mentioned chaotic or fair, and it really all goes back to how the household was when we were coming up. It really plays a huge role on our perception. And again, like I said, perception is not a fixed part of our brain. It's what we have created. It's what our brain has created based on the data that was input into that brain when it was a little growing brain. Okay, so the last perception. So this one is perception of what the world thinks of me, or probably more specifically, what do others think of me? And oftentimes this mirrors our own self-perception. If I'm hard on myself, and I'm not enough, I'm deadbeat, I can't do anything right, and so on, people make up stories that other people are assuming this, other people are thinking this also. And it's not true. When we believe others are thinking the same about us as we think about ourselves, this can fuel social anxiety, people pleasing, wanting to make everybody happy all the time, and being hypersensitive to rejection. Rejection is part of life. We're going to be told no every now and then, and oftentimes it's not personal. It's just something we can't hear yes all the time. So Charles Cooley called this the looking glass self. It's how we shape our identity partly through imagined, keyword, imagine thoughts or judgment of others. In the age of Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook and all those things, this lens can become exhausting. So here's some freeing truth, folks. Most people are far more focused on themselves than on judging you. And even when they do form opinions, their view is filtered through their own lens. It's not objective. And here's what I've told clients, because this is a big issue with a lot of clients. They worry about what other people think about them. And we were wired to be social creatures. So we do have some concern. I think that's normal. But when it starts affecting our mental health, when it's too much worrying, then that's a problem. So here's the thing, back again, most people are not paying attention to you. They're focused on what they think everybody else is thinking about them. But if they do have a negative observation or opinion of you, do you care? If someone is going to think or say, or if someone thinks or says something similar to your own harsh judgment of yourself, do you really need a friend like that? Or if it's a relative, do you really need to have open boundaries with that relative? No. You need to set up healthy boundaries. This person is not positive for you when it comes to how others perceive us. So I might ask my question if I'm having these ruminating thoughts. For example, Cindy Lou at work, I know she thinks I'm a failure. I've made 2 mistakes this week. Gosh, they're gonna let me go. Blah 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 blah. So if I'm having negative, irrational thoughts like that, I might ask myself, are these thoughts in alignment with my values? I mean, my true perception. Or am I trying to please somebody? Do I want Cindy Lou to be proud of me? Do I want Cindy Lou to accept me? That means I'm performing, or I am my actions or the task I'm doing at work. I'm really focused on more getting approval than I am with really feeling good about it. This is how I feel confident in this task I just completed, and so on. So, um, again, it's the majority. I said earlier, I've worked with many clients that put so much stock in other people's thoughts of them. Probably most of them, the majority of my clients are really, really hyper focused on that. And that usually aligns with their negative perception of themselves. So, anyway, so that's the third one. And so, just recapping, it's we have three interconnected lenses, okay? Perception of the self, perception of the world, and perception of how I think others perceive me. And if one of them is off or distorted, all of them are usually going to be distorted too, because they're so interconnected with each other. But here's the thing, the beautiful part is that if we make small changes, baby steps, we say, and we're consistent with positive adjustments in any one area of these three different types of perception, then it's a ripple effect. There you go, pebble ripple. If I'm really working on a more positive perception of myself with just, replacing negative thoughts with thoughts like, yeah, but I'm working on it. Or, hey, I make mistakes. I'm working on it. I'm growing. Something that is validating, this can ripple across the other three. So keep that in mind. Now, some practical takeaways from today. These are just some things you might, again, they are some suggestions that you might apply. If you have a very negative perception, then I would suggest you reach out to a counselor and let them help you navigate a good strategy on how to work on it. So here, I'm not really counseling, but I'm offering suggestions. These are things I've suggested to people in the past, or that I know other therapists have suggested. So here's one. So one way to look at to really dive into perception is in the evening when your day is done, maybe you have a journal and you write a sentence for each one of the perceptions. So, for example, uh, today I saw myself as fill in the blank. Secondly, today I saw the world as fill in the blank. And then lastly, today I believed others saw me as blank. And then ask yourself, is this helpful? It's okay if you saw some negative news or there's a new war or something really drastic in your community. It's okay if you respond, today I saw the world as uncomfortable in my community. That's okay. But you just don't want to stay there. You might say, is there something I can do to help either myself or the community? Okay. So another one, so that's a journal, an activity for a journal. And again, just write down one sentence for each one of those perceptions or each one of those lenses. So a daily reframe could be something like, if you catch one negative thought that your mind produced, then try to challenge that thought with evidence. For example, excuse me, thought of, let's see, okay, we'll do it with work again. Um, oh, today I'm probably going to mess up again since I made that mistake on that report last week. Okay, negative thought. Now, the daily reframe says gently challenge it with evidence. So that evidence would be, yeah, I made a mistake last week, but I don't think that's not going to substantiate that I'm going to make that same mistake this week. There's no evidence there, you see? So we want to challenge our negative thoughts with evidence. Okay, I'm a rotten piece of poo. Okay, what's the evidence that you are? Okay, so then another one is self compassion break. So again, when you notice harsh self talk or negative thoughts about yourself, place a hand on your heart and say, I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best. A world lens reset might look like this. Oh, well, world perception, perception of the world might look like this. And I said it earlier, limit how much you're scrolling. And I've heard it referred to as doom scrolling. You're just scrolling negative stuff. Maybe add something uplifting. I know when I started on X a couple of years ago, um, lots of negativity, lots of news in there. And so I slowly I guess that stuff's built on algorithms. And I didn't click on any of this negative stuff, or I quit clicking on it. I can't remember. But anyway, now my feed on X is primarily puppy dogs and babies. I mean, and adventurous stuff. So not everything, but probably 75 to 80% of my feed on X is usually has to do with puppy dogs and babies. So yeah, so we can change that. So anyway, listen, I do want to say that our perception is not about um, being positive when it's not authentic. If we're having a bad day, or like I said earlier about the news, if there's something negative happening in the world, it's okay to acknowledge that and maybe think, okay, well, is there anything I can do to help with that? So perception is not that we're all bouncing around, smiling from ear to ear, and everything's great. And perception is not about ignoring real pain, real emotional pain. I'm hurting today because of a recent loss. I'm hurting today because I moved to a new area of the country and I don't know anybody. I'm lonely. These are authentic, real feelings. And a positive perception doesn't ignore those. Perception is about seeing clearly enough to respond wisely instead of reacting fearfully, which some of the examples I've given today are fear based reactions. The thing is, folks, you have more power over your inner world than you could ever imagine. And there's been some good studies out there. I'm not going to cite them here, but if you look up mindfulness CBT, there's been people, a pre and post type study where they're looking at combat veterans with PTSD, and they're scanning their brain pre-treatment, and then they scan their brain after. And one group was getting CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and mindfulness-based therapy, and the other group got cognitive-based therapy only. And what researchers found on that was there was tremendous improvement in the brains of the veterans that also had the mindfulness. So I just point that out to show that we can change the way our brain responds to fearful things. We can change the way our brain responds to negativity. And usually that negativity there's some fear in there too, if not the majority of it being fear. Fear that you're scared of, fear of rejection, fear of failing. And so, yeah, that is the power that you have. Is you can change it, but I'm gonna tell you, it's not gonna be easy. So start off. You could start this week with one small shift, and then you can watch how your experience of life begins to change, how your perception of life begins to change, and do it slowly. We do it one small step at a time, and so if you'd like to post in the comments, I'd love to hear which lens you're working on, or if you've noticed this yourself of how your perception of yourself, your perception of the world, your perception of what others think of you, if they're all very similar, love to hear from you. And so I hope this was helpful. This episode was helpful for you. And until next time, I wish you peace and good mental health.